The information shared on CNS Unfiltered is for educational purposes only and is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease. Always consult your healthcare provider before making any health or lifestyle changes. The views shared are those of guests and do not necessarily reflect those of Innate Clinical Nutrition or its affiliates. This episode includes affiliate links, which help support the show. Hello and welcome. I'm Jenna Salisbury, and this is CNS Unfiltered, a show where clinical nutrition specialists uncover what traditional medicine overlooks. About 65% of women ages 15 through 49 in the United States use some form of contraceptive, with oral birth control pills still being among the most common methods. Many oral contraceptives contain synthetic hormones like estrogen and progesterone that prevent ovulation when released in the body. However, not every woman that is utilizing a hormone contraceptive is using it specifically to prevent ovulation or pregnancy. Hormonal birth control is used to treat various hormone-related symptoms, such as hormonal acne, migraines, irregular periods, or PCOS. There are a number of reasons why a person might decide to take hormonal birth control. And this is part of why birth control is so misunderstood in the greater conversation of reproductive health and choices. This episode is absolutely not intended to negate this reality for so many patients. That being said, the concept of hormonal birth control as a treatment method is complex, and there's a greater conversation to be had here. While it works to prevent and treat a number of symptoms, synthetic hormones change your body's chemistry. Over time, as our body's symptoms naturally change with age, this can impact our hormonal and endocrine health in numerous ways. Given how often throughout history women's health has been misstudied in medicine, misdiagnosed in doctors' offices, or simply ignored, it's not a surprise that the greater impact of long-term hormonal birth control use are not often discussed with patients that are taking them. What happens when a patient has been using a hormonal contraceptive for years, or decades even, to treat any number of symptoms or manage their reproductive choices, and one day they start to experience new hormonal symptoms? Suddenly, they're exhausted throughout the day. They have mood swings they've never experienced, new headaches or pains, unexplained weight gain. Sometimes the answer they're looking for might surprise them. Sometimes it means it's time to stop the contraceptives. Today's case study explores a long-term implication of hormonal birth control. We also have our first return guest. You all met Dr. Corey Schuler 2 weeks ago when he was discussing his research in our very first Journal Club episode. And this week, he returns to share a case study from one of his own clients. I'll talk with Corey today about his career journey and his work as a CNS practitioner and a nurse practitioner. We'll talk about hormonal imbalances, the role of lifestyle changes in health, asking the right questions in clinical nutrition, and of course, Corey will walk me through how the choice to stop an oral contraceptive, along with additional lifestyle changes, helped his client to get her energy back. If you're thinking hormonal or endocrine health is going to be your niche, or you're feeling bogged down by hormonal symptoms or shifts, this episode is for you. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to CMS Unfiltered. Today, I have the privilege of welcoming back Corey Schuler. Corey had been on for our very first journal club. If you have not caught this episode, make sure that you go back and view it. Today, Corey is going to walk us through his journey of becoming a CNS, where he's practicing and how he practices now, before we turn into a case study to get inside of his mind of how he thinks through a client case. Corey is a man with many hats and amazing. And I know for me anyways, I would have loved to follow in his shoes in many parts of his journey. So on top of being a CNS, he is also a nurse practitioner. He also has his PhD and is currently working for the as a medical affairs for the allergy research group. He has also wrote in the paper Energy Allocation, Resilience, and Endocrine Integration. Thank you so much for coming back on and being here to share yourself with our audience today.
Yeah, absolutely. It's my pleasure to be here. So
I appreciated the conversation we had about your journal. That was absolutely wonderful. And we don't do too much of a deep dive into your spotlight and your history in that episode. So I would really love to share your journey here today.
yeah, I think like a lot of CNSs, my route to become a CNS was a bit circuitous. I have a lot of students who have, they've had careers elsewhere and then found nutrition either through a personal experience or just self-interest and dove into it, full throttle. And my story is not that much different. I went through chiropractic college, and about halfway through, I decided I'm going to continue this process and get my master's degree in nutrition, because every time we talked about something that related to labs, everybody looked at me and was like, "What do we do?" And I never knew the answers, but I always was interested, and so I figured I should fill in some of those blanks in a more formal way. And so I went and did the master's in nutrition. And not to take this in entirely chronologically, but I was practicing really as a nutritionist from that kind of moment forward. I had the chiropractic degree and license, but people were seeing me for other reasons. And so what I found to be super interesting is that the best way that I could help people was to integrate with what other people were doing. So I had this essentially like long referral list of people in my community or even remotely that I could work with. And I was always sending people away. And they're like, "Why are you always sending people away? Um, why don't you do some of this stuff yourself?" And the answer was actually super simple. One day I ordered tests and I sent it to the local hospital, and I was like, "I want this person to have these tests." And they're like, "Okay, we can run those tests, but for whatever reason, your insurance isn't going to cover that to the patient unless this other person orders it." And I was realizing that I had to send people to another healthcare practitioner to get them to order it. And then and so it was another visit. It was another copay or visit expense to really get what I already knew what I wanted. And so I made a decision that said, "No, I'm going to handle the care. I'm still going to collaborate, and that's going to be me and who I am." But I needed more. So that's when I made the decision to go the long process of, nursing school and get a master's in nursing and become a nurse practitioner. And then, like a lot of other CNSs, I have a very understanding family where they're like, "That's just what you do. You're just going to go back to school and keep doing things." So here I am today.
Very, very awesome. And can you give a glimpse into what your world looks like today now that you've gone through all of that studying and all that you've gone? If another CNS kind of want to follow that path, what does life look like?
Yeah, it maybe is a better idea or a good idea in that vein to say, what does my week look like? Like
Sure, yeah.
Monday through Thursday, I'm in industry and I'm working as director of medical affairs for Allergy Research Group. And, not a 9 to 5 job. It's a big job. We handle quality, we handle product innovation, we're doing medical strategy with marketing team and product commercialization, and so a lot of interesting things. And if you're at all interested in supplements, then this is like the dream job. I really did land on the dream job with what I consider my dream company, and so I'm doing really cool work Monday through Thursday. Yeah,
Awesome.
and then I take a little bit of a break, and that break is usually late Thursday night. And then I get back on it because I have labs to review. I have patient inquiries. My inbox never is empty, much to the dismay of my triage nurse. Because Friday morning I'm at clinic by 6 a.m. and from 6 to 5, 6 to 6, I'm seeing patients all day on Friday, and then that kind of tips over into Saturday as well, and we try to pick up those further labs and those sorts of things. So I made my life more complicated than most people would want it to be, but it's hard to let go of anything when you love everything. And then occasionally I get to teach, so kind of throw that in on the side, either on the weekends or evenings or that sort of thing. So as a CNS, it's given me the most flexibility to do really what I want to do. And sometimes I really do equate myself more as like I'm a CNS. I happen to have the ability to write prescriptions and order imaging and that sort of thing as a nurse practitioner. But when people work with me, I think it's pretty similar to how they would work with their certified nutrition specialist. Similarly, I'm in industry, and yep, I have the letters that say I'm a research scientist, but I'm still thinking like a CNS when I write papers or when I'm communicating with my colleagues. And so it really has been the cornerstone credential of everything that's in the last, 20 years now.
Thank you so much for sharing that and really highlighting like chiropractic brought you into nutrition. And really the reason we got the nurse practitioner was to support the
Yep.
nutrition and the labs and the information that you need for that. That's wonderful. And I think that highlights very beautifully our little niche, our role and how it is foundational to any type of medicine, functional medicine, alternative
Yep.
medicine that we can look at.
No, I was just to say we were just in a like a not a group chat, but like a forum together, and somebody was like, "Hey, I have this case," and it was like, I think it was mast cell activation syndrome or something, and I said, "Hey, if you like these cases, let me know." And I'm still sort of playing that role of doctor community, if you will. And so I got a
Sure.
bunch of people that sent me their websites, and I've had a nice few conversations about that, and so I presented that to my group that I work in primary care with. And I was like, hey, if you have these types of cases, this is sort of the perfect type of client for this group. And, I think it's a lot of fun when we can know our limitations and what we're good and not good at. That's one area and that's the other fun thing about maturing in this role is that you start to realize there's some stuff that yeah, I probably could help that person, but I bet there's somebody that would love to and be better at
Sure.
it because of that passion. So,
Yeah, thank you for that insight, right? Because we can wear so many hats, or even just if we look at CNS, is such a broad scope of, I don't want to say diagnoses, but of health ailments that we
sure.
can try to find a baseline to. And so, really finding what your heart desires is really what's going to get you the farthest and happiest, right? You have a full schedule. Oh my goodness. But yet, when you were talking about it, you're still smiling,
Yeah.
like you're happy. And that's the beauty of doing, finding what you love and then just adding the extras to make it work for you.
Hmm.
For any CNSs out there listening right now, anything you'd like to say? Anything they should keep in mind, or words of wisdom, some pearls?
Yeah. Probably too many to count, but I'll start with a couple that I think are relevant and you can build off these. Is that you can pick an interest and be excited about something, and it's okay to change. You don't have to get stuck in a niche or anything like that. The CNS credential, like you mentioned, allows you a lot of latitude to get into other things. And as far as where I was doing a lot of work with women with polycystic ovarian syndrome, and I was good at it. I liked it. It kind of bled into perimenopause and postmenopause. And then I started working with thyroid. I sort of never really left that, and then added on these other bits and pieces on endocrine. Now I'm pretty satisfied being more of an endocrine kind of guy, but I didn't start there. I didn't say during my master's, all right, this is what I'm going to do, and I'm stuck with it. Kind of the way medicine often can be. You get matched in a residency, and you get matched to dermatology, you're going to do dermatology. That's not necessarily the way it is with our program. So when you ask about pearls or like things to think about, one is you don't have to get pigeonholed. The other thing
Yeah.
is, if you like supplements, learn as much as you can about it. Grab a company, learn, get deep in what they offer, and then say, all right, so this is great. This is what one company offers. What is another company? What that's a competitive kind of product? Start comparing and contrasting, get really interested in it. I actually was just chatting with somebody who was applying for a job with me at, in industry, and they were an RD and CNS, and they said that they sort of fell into this role of quality, like quality assurance, and
Okay.
they built up their skill set of understanding manufacturing and routing and corrective action procedures and this sort of stuff. And you don't learn that in your master's program, or at least anyone that I'm familiar with, but you just kept being curious. And that's the one thing I would say, like, yeah, be as curious as you can and load up on information as early as possible up to the overwhelm point. I'm not asking everybody to be overwhelmed with information and choices and that sort of thing, but get real close, and you'll have more flexibility on what you want to do. And maybe it's not supplements, maybe it's the food industry, or maybe it's just food and diet patterns in general, or maybe it's creating clinical frameworks like I like to do. You'll start, once you start getting into the mud of it, you can't just know what you're interested by reading about it, is what I say. You have to really get deeper and involved in it. And there's a whole bunch of us that would love to tell you about what we do, like we're doing now,
Yeah.
and help guide that path and encourage this next generation any way we can. And so that's sort of my third point is look for mentors. They're under every rock and are behind every tree. We all really want to be helpful in this life. And so I don't want to say take advantage of it, because that's not what I mean. And I'm not suggesting we reach out and say, hey, can I pick your brain for 30 minutes to everybody that you might find? But when you find somebody that you really resonate with, for whatever reason, take the time to learn about what they do, why they do it, what they love about it, and maybe some of the stumbling blocks, and not just the route that they took to get there, because we all have that circuitous route.
Definitely. Thank you for bringing that to light too, because we do talk about all these different options. And one of the reasons I highlight everyone who comes on this journey is because, wow, they're all different, right? Some start in research, some start in writing, some start in a clinic, some start in supplements or in a kitchen, right? That is just so broad. And then sometimes you kind of think about it like, okay, I'm getting a little burnt out. I know there's so much to do, but how do I transition, right? How do I get my foot in the door already? Um, you're the first one we've really gotten to touch on the supplement world industry part. Would you mind if I picked your brain a little bit more just about
Sure.
that as the industry, that as it relates to CNS? I know you said, you know, really poke at the person and just let your curiosity guide you to kind of get in, but anything specific in that world? I'm super curious.
Yeah, I mean, this is again my story, is that
Yep.
I was looking for an additional job. I thought it was maybe consulting, or maybe like I was just looking to maybe add a little bit. Clinic was great. I loved it. But I really wanted a little bit something different. And so I happened to see a job come across, and they said, we're looking for a nutritionist. If you happen to have a doctoral degree, like a DC or an ND, that's even better. And if you have training in acupuncture, even better. And I was like, I have those things. I didn't really
Cool.
apply for jobs. I didn't even have a resume. but I made one real fast. This was before this is a long time ago. So we're talking like 2009-ish. In 2009, put together my first real big boy resume, and I shot it off, and it was a distributor of dietary supplements in New Hampshire. Emerson Ecologics is now full script, but they were looking for what they called a professional services specialist. And if I have to bottom line this was like an elevated customer service experience. So if a customer service or customer care got a call from a physician, healthcare practitioner, and they said, yeah, that's really more of like a how to use kind of thing about the 20,000 products that we carry. I'm going to warm transfer you over to our professional services team, which later became medical education. We would talk to those healthcare practitioners, help them find the right product in our portfolio that sort of matched their needs. And that's where I started. And then I did a good job, and so they gave me more opportunity and uh, I'll say responsibility. And I was ended up traveling a lot to different trade shows, or like conferences. So you think like the A4M and IFM and any other letters kind of conferences. I was going to those once or twice a month for a long time, and I got to meet everybody. So
Cool.
it's not a clinical parole, but get to know people. I'm an introvert. I don't necessarily love to be social, but in those cases, I put on the social face, and I tried to meet everybody. I wanted to know what they did, why they did it, who they work for, what's that company's DNA look like, because I knew I probably wouldn't be with that distributor forever. And sure enough, I met somebody, and they're like, yeah, I'm actually looking for somebody just like you, and joined up with their company and was with them for several years, still write papers and publish things with them. So it's good to make
Awesome.
friends. That's how I got in. I've helped a lot of other people though, and not to belabor the point, but I've hired on people who are gifted writers, and you can learn how to write in this like structure function oriented regulatory compliant language that dietary supplement industry is required to use. That's a huge skill set. I'm always talking about building skill sets and meeting people, and I think it comes down to that. But that's a hard skill to learn, and once you learn it, you can apply it to a lot of different companies because the regulations don't really change. I've also brought on people who are really gifted speakers, and I said, hey, can you speak to a group of healthcare practitioners for me? This is the topic. I might even have a slide deck for them that they can use and make their own. But there's opportunities like that too, if you kind of know what you're at least interested and willing to learn and sharpen your skill set on. Those are sort of ways into both industry, medical devices, and even laboratory assessment. Some people just love sales. They love the interaction.
Yeah.
And I've had a number of really high potential CNSs and other nutrition professionals be very, very successful in the sales world. And the world is your oyster, I think.
I think so too. I do. And thank you for highlighting so many of those different paths and sharing a little deeper into your story
Yeah,
there.
absolutely.
So we're going to move into the second half. I am super excited to see your case or to hear about your case study. So for the first question for this case study, let you have the background, give us the updates of the client that we're talking about. And then the first question is, where did traditional medicine leave off?
Okay. All right. Well, here's the setup. A 42-year-old female came to see me. She had a constellation of concerns, and they had really developed mostly over the prior year. So she's 42. She started thinking, well, is this perimenopause? I see it on my social media. Is that what that is? She'd reported a 15-pound weight gain that nobody really cared about except for her, and the fact that she had to shop for new clothes because things weren't fitting the way she wanted them to. But she was at a BMI, not that we love the BMI, but she was at a BMI of like 19, and went up to like a 21 point something. So within the healthy range, But that 15-pound swing was very disconcerting for her. Again, she heard that that could be perimenopause. She heard it could be cortisol. She's heard it could be a lot of other things. When we started talking, she also mentioned that she had pretty persistent morning and late afternoon fatigue, which she commented was not like her. She's a go-getter. She's very active. Like, she's always doing something. Busy bee, she'd call herself. She's like, if the dishes have to be done, not because I have any pathology around that, I need to be busy. And so I'm always doing something. And in the last year, that's not necessarily the case. I feel like I've lost my motivation, she said. Is that perimenopause? Okay. So, the other thing that she said, just she felt like she had like mild cognitive fog. She's like, I don't think I have dementia. I don't have that in my family, or like, I don't think it's like that. It's just like things aren't as sharp. Am I just getting old? And at 42, I was like, you're not old. And if you are, I'm really old. So let's not talk about that. She had had an active lifestyle, and she'd been pretty involved in her healthcare. She early in her life had experienced like bowel urgency. She'd go out to eat and she'd have to go to the bathroom relatively rapidly. She worked with somebody like us, not me, but she found that she was had some pancreatic insufficiency. Maybe not full blown exocrine pancreatic insufficiency like we think about medically, but she found that digestive enzymes really helped her, and so she would take digestive enzymes most meals. And through that process, discovered there's some trigger foods that didn't go well for her. So she avoided some of those things, did some food sensitivity testing. I would say was pretty active advocate for herself in healthcare. She was very active. Like I said, she's a busy person, and some of that energy went into working out and, staying in shape, that sort of thing. But then she's like, this last year, I don't recover well. And so if I work out just a little bit too hard on a Monday, I might not be willing to work out until Friday or Saturday again. And that's not my usual frequency. So I was like, okay, I'm getting the picture. We're all getting the picture now. Like, things are kind of not going the way she would like. I asked her about stress. Like, where are you at with stress? Empty nester, kid out of the house. Like, she's like, probably have the lowest stress of my entire life right now. This shouldn't be happening to me because my stress level is pretty low. So I call that low perceived stress. Although when I dug around and I was like, well, is your work stressful? Is your family stressful? Things started to emerge of like, oh, there's some different stressors than I got used to. And so when we really came down to it and did some validated questionnaires, things like that, it was really more of a moderate to high perceived stress, even though my initial question it was like, no, everything's good. So I actually strongly recommend we keep poking at what we mean by how stressful is your life, because if we just say, oh, it's just life, sometimes we really miss something big.
I think a part of it too is we're going to get the default, especially if it's the first intake.
Yeah.
And they're like, I don't trust you yet. I ain't telling you the truth. It's fine. Everything's fine.
Correct. Yeah. It's like nobody wants stress to win. And so it's hard to admit when it does kind of creep in. Interesting is when I was doing a little bit of a deep dive on HPA axis function and stress response and that sort of thing, I found that recurrent similar stressors cause less of a stress response activation. So if you have the same big stressor or bigger-ish stressor all the time and repeatedly, you get really good at handling that stress. But because of that activation, new stressors that are unrelated to that or not persistent, you don't handle well and can cause significant HPA axis activation. So anyway, that's an aside, but something that
So it's kind of like the analogy they teach us in school, right? Your bucket is filled up and you can usually handle what's in the bucket, but now anything new coming in is going to kind of put you over the edge, and we're not going to have that same capacity or resiliency to handle that stress.
Yep, one more drop and
Let's hear
it's
it.
over. So
Yeah.
the other thing that they had her come in to see me is that she had frequent night sweats. So she's, again, it's got to be the perimenopause, and she says she sleeps really hot. Okay, So I'm going to fast forward because she went to her doctor, her regular like primary care doctor. It wasn't me. Went to somebody, said, I want to look at my thyroid because of this weight gain thing. And I want to look at my hormones, and I want to look at my blood sugar because I talked to somebody and they had a blood sugar problem and it kind of looked like stuff I had. Doctor did the right thing, ordered a good panel of thyroid stuff, looked a little bit
Okay.
more deeply at the blood sugar stuff, and then recommended that she talk to a women's health nurse practitioner to talk about the hormone piece of things. When I can give you the answers because I took notes, is that the women's hormone nurse practitioner said, yep, I think some things can happen. And one of the things that you should probably be thinking about is, do you really need to be on the oral contraceptives that you've been on for the last 25 years? And it's a bigger discussion, probably worth its own podcast, probably not with me because I'm not an expert in it. But the reality is that, that was a challenge for both of them. Like, could it be that we're propping up your hormone levels so high and your body can't maintain them? And so we're seeing these drops in hormones. Hormones are secreted at very small amounts and very strategically at certain time points in the day and the month. And we're overriding that. And is your body handling that? Very astute recommendation by the nurse practitioner. The lab results came back from her doctor in the interim, and TSH, or thyroid hormone, pretty much in the middle range, according to them. Free T4, pretty much in the middle. Free T3, pretty much in the middle. So even if I wanted to squint and hallucinate and find these optimal ranges and say, oh, nope, I think it's your thyroid, we couldn't even really do that. Of course, I did. Her TSH, just to give a number, was 2.8 approximately, and 2.8 is above what I would consider the optimal like point for TSH, but still well within the range. We hadn't had any trend data because this is sort of the first time she investigated this, with the exception of we kind of did see one about 4 or 5 years ago, and her TSH was less than 1. And so at less than 1, she was that busy person. She was getting everything done, doing all this work, and it had changed within that normal, just like her weight had changed within that normal, but she didn't feel her normal.
Mm-hmm.
So then I took a look, or her doctor took a look. Her fasting glucose was 93. Most of us would say, that's running on a little bit high, but probably okay. Hemoglobin A1C was about 5, pretty darn good. And fasting insulin was like 7.5, 7.5, which wouldn't scream to anyone insulin resistance. It wouldn't scream anything, although what's the other labs look like? So I asked her for not history, but her historical records. So she got those back, and we saw that her other doctor, not this one, but the previous one that she had worked with before, really never paid much attention to her lipid panel, like never ordered it. And so we got it. And her glucose was good, and her, let's see, what else was good? Her glucose was good. Her, LDL was fine if we want to think about it from a cardiac standpoint, but her triglycerides were very, very high. And when triglycerides are very,
Mm.
very high, they tell me one of two things. Well, probably more than that, but at least one of two things. And the first one being, is this insulin resistance? Another marker for it. Is this controlled by or elevated because of oral contraception in women? That can happen. And the other one is when I dig really deep, is this like fat that's free floating that's not being converted into fuel and being pushed into mitochondria? And is that shuttling process maybe not working the way it should? So that was a little bit of additional detail that I got that I was very excited to get.
Awesome. Would you say that was the main aha that you ended up uncovering that her traditional physicians didn't look for?
I think that was a big aha, although the women's health nurse practitioner came to the same conclusion without seeing any of it. Just said, "Hey, do
Sure.
you really need to be on these birth control pills?" So, but where it went wrong, and that was your original question, was what went wrong was the note that said your thyroid and your blood sugar are normal. Take care. That was it.
Yeah.
And they're not wrong. That's exactly accurate, but it didn't address then why did I gain weight? Why do I have all these symptoms that I just told everybody about? What's going on with it? So I think that might be more of where medicine went wrong rather than which assessments or which treatments to do. So that and the fact that we let people
Yeah.
be on oral contraceptives for years and years and years without really any significant reassessment.
Can you bring in some of the science of how and what kind, right? Are we talking estrogen, progesterone? Like, if you can connect the dots a little bit for our listeners, um, that would be wonderful.
Yeah, I have to look in her chart, which I don't have open. I just have the notes. But give me 1 second. I think that I can, if I remember correctly, this was like a low estrogen birth control pill. And as we know, oral contraceptives, especially estrogens, they have to be metabolized. And that metabolic function, the breakdown of those estrogens and the excretion of excess estrogens can cause vascular risk, cardiovascular risk, which is why on every package it says may increase stroke risk. So don't smoke if you're using oral contraceptives. But it was a low estrogen oral contraceptive, and that that mismetabolism or the fact that the liver had to do so much work to break those down into other metabolites, and then her system, for whatever reason, not necessarily excreting them. There's major pathways of detoxification in the liver, the cytochrome P450 enzyme system, and a lot of different um, medications. In fact, I think all medications, unless they're not metabolized through the liver, go through one of these approximately 5 pathways. And they're very B vitamin dependent, which is why oral contraceptives deplete B vitamins, especially folate and B12. And the other thing is they're very amino acid dependent. And so if you're not getting in protein, breaking down protein from digestion, not giving that hepatic portal circulation sufficient amino acids, there's a good chance that there's just metabolites hanging out that shouldn't be. And that's where that cardiovascular risk raises. And it does it primarily through the elevation of triglycerides.
Thank you so much. Because I think everyone has it beyond that, right? The triglycerides, we know where those are going to go and how those are going to store and the ripple effect of those. So thank you for bringing together even a low dose, right? A low dose of this contraceptive that we take, most women take every day. It could build up, right? Going back to your resilience or our bucket of our toxic load. Well, I've been on it for 20 years. It hasn't affected me. Of course, it can't be my contraceptive. like but eventually the body is going to go through its own shifts and turns too and be like, you know what? Things have changed. I don't like that no more.
Yep,
It's not the same.
absolutely.
So, did she work with you to get off the contraceptive and did that change labs?
Yeah, the nurse practitioner, the women's health nurse practitioner said, let's go ahead and stop it. And that was a longer conversation from what I understand of like, do you want to? Are you ready to? Like, it was very permission
Sure.
based collaborative conversation. And the decision was made in shared decision making process of, yes, I'm going to stop that. Now, we break down the scientific method entirely in clinical practice because we did more than one thing at a time. In an older lab, I said I reviewed some of her older labs, and this was sort of a one that I forgot to share because it didn't seem very relevant, but maybe it did. Is that there's a vitamin D levels were running in the 20s. It was like actually low, and
Oh, wow.
nobody had ever really told her about it. The labs just were done, and they were just done. And so I don't know why she had the vitamin D test done. I don't know anything at all around the circumstances. But nothing was done about it. So we retested, and sure enough, it was 23 when we got her vitamin D. This is the 25 hydroxy vitamin D test, which is a preferred test. And so we started her on 10,000 IU of vitamin D. Is that going to do anything to her triglycerides? I don't know, probably not. But low vitamin D is generally not a good idea. And then the oral contraceptives went away. And then we actually added in acetyl L-carnitine. And L-carnitine from biochemistry, we know that's the primary shuttle, taking triglycerides and shoving them in through not just the cell, but into the inner mitochondrial membrane. And so I was like, let's burn that fuel when we can. So we did a couple of things at the same time. Because she was strenuously exercising, we decreased the intensity, but increased the frequency. So she was working out 6 times a week, but like 2 on one day, 2 on another day, 2 on another day, which that was her choice to do it that way, but small bouts of exercise. So we changed all of this stuff all at once.
Cool.
So coming back to which variable did what, I don't know. We just wanted her to get
That's fair.
But when
Yeah.
we did retest, and we retested formally like 12 weeks later, and triglycerides were back in normal range. Her vitamin D, because I give her a fairly big bolus of vitamin D, was 63. So it went up a full 40 points, was in what I would consider more the optimal range. And then we were able to back down on the dose of vitamin D, because I think we did 10,000 IU, or what is it, 250 micrograms. We backed that down to 125 micrograms because I generally don't like to do that high of a dose for more than 12 weeks. And so we were at a point where we could back down on that. She stayed with the acetyl-L-carnitine because she felt like it gave her pretty good energy, and she lost 10 pounds. And we attribute it to acetyl-L-carnitine. I think it was probably the combination of things, but the reality was she was down 10 pounds, basically lost almost everything, 2/3 of what she had gained in the last year. And I haven't followed up with her further, but I do know that, and this is an important point, in nutrition practice, we often talk about behavior change. And those first few days, first few weeks, there's a lot of back and forth with me, with the women's health nurse practitioner, her doctor that ordered the labs, about, should I do this? Hey, I'm going to do this. Is it okay if I do this? Can I add this on this on this? And it was a lot of work on her part. And so therefore it should have been, and it was a lot of work on the rest of our parts to make sure we had set her on the right course. And then after, I think, a week or maybe 10 days of a lot of communication, we didn't hear from her. I didn't even know if she continued with the program. I don't know what happened. But it's because she got it. She figured it out, got it, boom, and went off. So
Yeah, but no news is good news usually when it comes to the clients you've been working with like that. And I want to kind of hone in on how you answered the last question, because absolutely, right? I think traditional medicine has our mindset into the magic pill, right? The one thing, or we do talk a lot here, like, we're going to start with one thing and we'll build and we'll titrate and we're going to create this plan. But you know what? Sometimes the one thing does not work. And if the one thing worked, we wouldn't be in the health crisis, I'll say, as we are.
Yeah.
A way that I kind of explain to my clients sometimes is like, if you even think of like a really complex machine with all these gears, or like a watch, we are way more complex than that.
Yep.
And if it's going one way and we need it to go the other way, if you just take one gear in the middle of that machine and you just try to stop it, let alone move it the other way, oh my God, you're going to cause more damage. We're going to break a tooth. Something's going to go one way, something's going to go the other way. And this is where it gets messy before it gets cleaner again. But if you understand the system, either A, you're able to throw a wrench in at the right spot and get it to move a different way, or B, you go low and slow and you target multiple gears at the same time and you slow them down. And then you can get the system. But it's never normally going to be one pill or one thing. It's going to be the mind with the lifestyle, with probably a few supplements or foods, or however the program is approached. But I love that you're like, no, it's not one thing. She thinks it's one thing, but realistically, like we had to do a few things.
Yeah, I actually made a note of that and I wrote like the temptation, being on the endocrine side of on the work. I want to make it about hormones. Like I want it to be a nail because I'm a hammer, right? And so I could have looked and saw that TSH climbing and being like, "Oh, that's a thyroid. That's a subclinical hypothyroid, and I can treat that. And I'm going to give her levothyroxine or thyroid hormone." And that's I'm glad I resisted that temptation because it looks like, and again, this is a little bit more on that theory on the energy allocation system, is that
Yeah.
the thyroid was compensating. It was slowing down because these other things were going on in the life of the person, and that I'll say the oral contraceptive stressor was one of them. So we'll call it detoxification for lack of a better term. There was the stressor of like kind of change in life, not necessarily perimenopause, but maybe also perimenopause. And what I found really interesting about disciplining myself on not treating the labs and looking and saying, oh, don't always jump to that. Look to see if there are compensations around that. Is that body slowing down for a reason? And in this case, it definitely was because the uh, I'll say the thyroid function can overstimulate mitochondrial capacity, and that can make you feel a lot worse. And so the body was super smart in that way. It was throttling back down. And if I would have overridden that natural throttle, she would have not liked me. She would have been mad at me, and she would probably not continue with the program. You don't continue with the program, you don't get better. So I'm glad I didn't do that.
Thank you for sharing that too, because you really bring in the foundational piece of functional medicine. Keep asking why. And once you understand the system too, I have learned the same that you have just explained. That thyroid, yes, it's our physical temperature gauge, but also you can gauge a lot on where the body system is at. Is it trying to down throttle or is it speeding up? It tells you a lot about the stress state and the operating system that it's in and what's going on. And I saw that a lot in the last office. They see the physician first and they're quick, real quick to put in the compounds to make things in optimal range.
Uh,
Right. And I was like, whew, it's going to be hard to read between the lines sometimes with that. And you're right. They might not feel better. And we got to take a few steps back and just, again, ask why.
yeah.
Why is it not optimal? It's not yelling at us, right? It's not mad. So now let's just kind of find out what it needs to be optimal.
Yeah, I could round out this case by sharing a little bit more about the other pieces that we did, right? With that
Sure.
notification of slight after we dig a little bit, that moderate to higher stress perception, we did do some adaptogenic botanicals for her. We did do a thyroid support, not to drive and push thyroid, not to introduce hormones from outside the body, but just to bring in a little bit more. We happen to use just a thyroid glandular for that, and so it was a supplement rather than a medication, so it didn't provide excess hormones. And then I mentioned the acetyl L-carnitine and the changes in physical conditioning frequency and intensity. But we also did stuff with sauna and contrast showering. She had a sauna in her home, which so made it super
Cool.
convenient. And I said, I think 2 to 3 saunas a week is probably a really good idea. That's that hormetic exposures so that mitochondrial reserve capacity can build upon itself. Because, right, I'm feeding it more fatty acids from those triglycerides by shuttling it with the carnitine. And so I got to make that furnace burn. And so you can do that by using sauna or contrast showering or I think to a degree, maybe ice bathing. But there's some questions about if that does what we think it does or not. So that seemed to be it. And then the women's health nurse practitioner who loves to do bioidentical hormones and loves to track and assess people on that path was like, I don't think we need to do this. I think that all the changes that we made are unnecessary and it would just stress out your body. So let's not do that. So kind of a cool outcome.
Very cool. Very awesome. And just because I know we see it all over the internet, so I'll let you do your own myth, but I'm going to ask one too. What is the proper dosing for carnitine?
So there isn't one. But I can tell you,
Right?
but I can tell you this. I think that if you get in the multi-gram levels, so let's call it 3 grams or more of carnitine, you're probably looking at some negative effect on the thyroid. We actually used it back in the old days in hyperthyroid, so hyperfunctioning of thyroid. That would be a way to slow that system down. So my dose, and it is what it is, not necessarily right or wrong, is 1,500 milligrams, which for her, I think that it was a 500 milligram capsule, so 3 capsules a day. She ended up taking it all at once rather than split dosing it for convenience. I don't know if that's good, bad, otherwise optimal. I don't know. But 1,500 milligrams and it was the acetyl L-carnitine. So it had a little bit, it was already like partially down that metabolic track and maybe has a little bit more blood-brain barrier access. But 1,500 milligrams was what I chose, but I can't tell you for anything if that is exactly right.
No, that's perfect. Thank
Mhm.
you. Thank you. Is there a myth you would like to debunk for our audience today?
Yeah, it is entirely possible that somebody needs help when all of their labs are normal.
Oh, yeah. That's why we have a
I
job.
mean, no, that's sort of a silly myth. One of them might be that there isn't a perfect dose of any supplement for people. We have to test to get a response, and so we talk about constraints, and one of those constraints is the lived experience or the response for somebody. It's okay if somebody doesn't tolerate the dose that worked for the last person. It's okay if they need more and don't get the response that you're expecting. And so the nice thing about the therapeutic or the wide therapeutic window of dietary supplements and foods is that you have that flexibility. If I have, a certain medication, sometimes I have this big of a window and it's either this dose or this dose and it's one or the other and that's it. Um, but yeah, I flippantly talked about acetyl-L-carnitine, but I could talk about that with vitamin D. There's a broad, but not super broad range of vitamin D dosing. There's a broad range of those adaptogenic botanicals, anything from 50 milligrams of most extracts up to 400 or 500 seems to be pretty reasonable. And some people do better with higher amounts of that. So I'm checking in pretty frequently to understand that. And it's how do I say, no shade on the system of medicine that we're not allowed that degree of follow-up. We're not compensated necessarily for our inbox most of the time. We're not compensated to call and reach out to people. So you have to do the things that help keep your own lights on and pay your mortgage, right? So the things that aren't compensated, aren't paid, are often the things that fall through the cracks. But the reality and maybe the myth is that the medicine does the work and the medicine doesn't do the work. Medicine is a tool. The behavior and the lifestyle of the person that they choose and that the medicine helps them choose in some ways is really the biggest lift that we can that we can see, that we can measure, that we can identify. And we see it over and over again in outcomes that the people that change their lifestyle and do the tools, whether that's supplements, change in diet, medication, whatever it is, the people that do the lifestyle work in addition to it are the ones that see long-term sustainable benefit and even short-term sustainable benefit.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that, and I'm gonna end it right there on that high note with your closing because that was perfect, and it's so true, and that's where we get to be super special too with precision nutrition and getting to meet that client where they're at. And then you talked about maturing into the role, and you showed that multiple times through this interview. But that might be a highlight of that also. You'll start to understand, okay, this is my flexible range and how I can divide it or dose it or bolus it to get the outcomes that I want. So if anybody is listening right now and they're like, you know what, Corey is up my alley. Like, I need to talk to him. I'm interested. How would they learn more about you or maybe get to work with you? What does that look like?
Yeah. The social media channel of my preference is probably LinkedIn. That's probably the one I check in on the most. If you want to see pictures of my dachshund, it's probably Instagram. But professionally, LinkedIn is kind of where I spend most of my time. So just Corey Schuler on LinkedIn. I don't think there's too many of us, so you'll be able to find me. I'm the nerd talking about nutrition and labs and primary care and all that sort of stuff. So you'll know me when you see me. And then I practice at White Bear Lake and out of Synergy Family Physicians. And of course, my role with Allergy Research Group, I pop up in different places doing that type of work as well.
Thank you so much, Corey, for sharing everything today, for coming and giving me 2 interviews with you. I feel super lucky. And thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thank you so much, Corey, for coming back and sharing more of your wisdom with me today. 2 for 2, first Journal Club guest and the first guest to return for a second episode. Way to go. Thanks to our listeners for tuning in today for this episode of CNS Unfiltered. Hormonal health always reminds me that things are temporary. Our bodies are not just static objects. They are living, breathing, growing beings. We will shift externally throughout our lives, but we will also shift internally in so many ways. Know that there's a way to support yourself as you are now, in this moment in time, and it likely isn't going to be forever. To get in touch with Corey, find him on LinkedIn. If you're local to Minnesota, you can find him in White Bear Lake at Synergy Family Physicians. If you're interested in working with me, check out innateclinicalnutrition.com to schedule a phone call. If you're a future or current CNS or functional medicine practitioner, medical professional, or functional medicine patient, we want to hear from you. If you have questions, comments, or success stories, send us an email at cnsunfiltered@gmail.com. If you are a clinical nutritionist or other functional medicine practitioner and you're interested in being interviewed, click the link in the show notes. Be sure to subscribe wherever you're listening. Follow at Innate Clinical Nutrition so you don't miss a new episode. And share this with a client or a colleague who might need to hear it. Once again, I'm Jena Salisbury, and remember to listen to your gut.